Sawadee krap, namaste and hello. Life is complicated. Is it? No. We make life complicated. Life is simple. Life is being born, getting old, getting sick and dying. And if we're lucky, in between we have times of enjoyment, times of happiness. We also have times of pain, times of sadness. And generally speaking, throughout, as the Buddha taught us, there is suffering. Why is life in our perception complicated? Because we make it complicated. Suffering comes about as a result of desire, us wanting things we haven't got, or not wanting things we do have. For instance, wanting the latest new model of motor car, and you have to put up with an old one, or not wanting the fact that you have a pain in your knee. This is still desire, not to have. Even when we satisfy those desires, or we think we can satisfy those desires, which are insatiable, unable to be satisfied, we find more suffering in that we get that new car and then we have to worry about that new car. We have to insure it, look after it, keep it locked up in a garage, protect it with alarms, clean it, polish it. From the minute we receive that new vehicle, and this could apply to anything, from a new handbag to a new pair of shoes to a new phone, we're concerned about its inevitable decay. You have to consider everything as already broken, because that is the truth and that is the way it is. And with that understanding, you are not so worried about its eventual inevitable decay. This doesn't mean you ignore and don't repair things, don't look after things, you adopt a oh well careless attitude, like knowing we're only born to die. We don't wander through life saying, I'll do nothing today, I'm only going to die. Because no, we have a marvellous opportunity to make the most of this human life by doing good and improving our own understanding of it, of the nature of existence, of its characteristics. I've spoken before about those characteristics, that everything is impermanent, unsatisfactory, and not within our control. Even our bodies are out of our control. What will happen inside them, we do not know. How long they will last, we do not know. We cannot know. But we can look after them, and we can look after our things. This is also human nature, to cherish, to nurture, starting with our children, bringing up our children. Or we learn that from being children, being brought up by our parents. And this accounts for all beings. But we are incessantly on this drive to distract ourselves from the truth with pleasurable things, or things we perceive to be pleasurable. Now, it's often that you hear the conversation about people planning their holidays. They've got some time off work. Now this is valuable time because you're working for most of the year and for a lot of your life if you're in full-time employment. And these days, of course, hours are not so restricted to 9 to 5 days a week. They spread outside of those hours. So the limited time to have away from your responsibilities and duties of work, you want to spend fruitfully, enjoyably. But then we make that complicated. Oh, where to go? Well, we won't go there. We went there last year, we didn't like it. And then how to get there? And then all of the different travel complications. And then, of course, the saving of the money to pay for this adventure. What is the purpose of this holiday? It is to stop working for some time, to rest your body and rest your mind. And this can be done anywhere. Now, yes, it is nice perhaps to go to somewhere where the weather is better. But what happens when you get there? Well, you cover yourself in lots of cream to protect yourself from the sun, and then in the evening you cover yourself with more cream to protect yourself from the mosquitoes, and a lot of the time spend a lot of the time moaning about the various aspects of being in a hot place and really missing the comforts of home. Now, I'm massively generalizing there. This is not always the case, of course. But the point being, why do we go to such effort and expense in order to have a few days away somewhere different when we've hardly spent any time at home at all because we've always been at work? Why do we not just stay at home? A lot of people, for the first time in many people's lives during these recent few years, stayed at home because they were told to. And I'm sure a lot of people didn't like it, but only perhaps because it was enforced. But take the example of, I'm sure you've never done this, but say you've really not wanted to go to work one day and you've told your boss, I'm really not coming to work today, I'm quite ill, and you tell a little lie and say you're not coming in because you're sick, and you stay at home. How much do you enjoy home on that day? Well, I'll have to admit I've done that, not very often, and I have been a little bit ill, but I really enjoyed being at home. Most of my working life also I was self-employed, so it wasn't an option. But the times when I was employed and I did that, and I can count those times in my entire career on less than 5 on one hand, but I can remember them. Apart from the fact I was worrying that I might be found out, I don't know why, because how? And apparently it's quite a common thing for people to do. Apart from that, I really enjoyed that time at home with nothing to do, to relax and settle. Now maybe that's just me, but no, we don't believe that. We believe we have to be going outside, looking at things, seeing things. I was hearing of someone's holiday plans recently, and it involves hiring cars, driving up this mountain, that mountain, going on ferries, on trains, on airplanes, all of these things. Well, you know, that is very much a very active and busy schedule. Hardly a holiday, a time to rest, hardly a time to replenish your body's levels of energy and enthusiasm for when you return to work. Surely when you return after such a thing, I know they say a change is as good as a rest, but that's not really true. Very much change often causes quite a lot of stress. Now maybe physically you might feel rested, but mentally any level of stress does take something out of you. So hearing these plans, I was thinking, yes, that sounds like hard work. Why don't you just stay at home and do nothing? And I've suggested that before. It doesn't really go down well. So I don't really suggest that to people anymore. But I'm suggesting it to you now if you're thinking of travelling, if you're thinking of what to do for your next holiday. Maybe even call it a little retreat at home, where you unplug yourself from social media. Don't watch the news, don't read the newspapers, don't necessarily get involved in discussions about all the things that may be going on that are not positive in your country for a little while. Put yourselves in the shoes, not that we have shoes, the position of monastics, of monks and nuns, who are living similarly to that all of the time. Now, wherever we are, it is the same routine, from morning until night, and then through the night until morning again, each and every day. So there really is little change. It is a very simple life. If you go to rural communities of, well, any country, but it's very apparent in rural communities of Asian countries, where there is, I suppose, what you'd call poverty, but I call it a richness in quality of life. When you see people living in very simple houses, simply built of wood or local materials, mud and everything, just to provide shelter for sometimes quite large families in small accommodation, but just waking up with the sun, farming, getting the food in, looking after the animals, eating, talking, sleeping, and so on. But the contentment levels, and I won't say necessarily the happiness levels, because happiness is really just some symptom that comes as a result of being content. But generally, the feeling you get in those areas is a very much a feeling of a stress-free environment, of people enjoying the simple things in life. That when you're in the busy cities and these places, which I appreciate, maybe places where you have to work. Not so much these days. A lot of work can be done online, especially as a result of people being at home working for so long. I've never really understood, apart from for foreign business people coming into major cities, why big companies are in big cities these days. There seems to be no need for a big investment company to be in the middle of the city of London, in the most expensive property in the world, when it could be in Wales. I mean, sorry people of Wales, that's in the UK, you probably don't want that company. Oh, there are a lot of big financial companies there in Swansea and Cardiff, but I'm talking about these head offices. You put them in big cities, Paris, Rome, London, Milan, you know, these kind of things for the fashion groups. It's just to satisfy the sensual desires and the greed element in all people supporting those companies. It's to show off. Now, we'll happily go on holiday to the remote isles of this country or that country, and even adventurous people among us go and stay in remote villages and rural areas, maybe taking some of our own creature comforts from home, but to experience that. And usually it is a very pleasant experience. I know people who stay in a hut much like this, and they call this a camping holiday, or a tent even. And it is a holiday. But why not simplify your whole life? Why does it need to be complicated? I'm not saying you need to live in a tent, and I'm not saying you never need to go on holiday. But if you start by reducing the acquisitions and the things you're striving for down to the, not necessarily the bare necessities, but gradually knocking off the unimportant things from the list. Because all people have these hopes and aspirations, but they are the foundations to what? If they are the foundations for finishing a successful career and retiring happily, what does that mean? Does it mean then you have nothing to do, you stay at home, and even whatever money you have, you've saved up, however much that is, will that bring you contentment? Or will then you be bored because you're not going to that working environment every day that you've got used to? You can't generally, it seems, just switch off like that. Many people after retirement, and not long after retirement, die because their bodies are no longer matching up with their minds. Their minds are no longer matching up with their activity in life. And maybe subconsciously it's a case of giving up. I'm no longer of any worth, of any need, of any use. I can just let this body go. But that is not what we're striving for. That's not what we're saving up for. We're saving up to have an enjoyable time, be able to go and eat out at restaurants, go on holiday and do all of these things. The things that we're also wanting to do now. But what enjoyment comes from those things when you look at it realistically? When you really look at eating. We love to eat food. And yes, it is nice to go to restaurants where the food is presented beautifully, served to you. But look how much you pay for that by comparison to just eating ordinarily at home. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. But think about it. What is the point? And with this understanding, through this practice of Buddhism in terms of practicing a moral, virtuous way of life through keeping 5 precepts, just 5 rules, and through meditation, we develop the wholesome aspects of our mind and reduce the unwholesome. The unwholesome being often that thirst and quest for the next better version, the next best restaurant, the next best bottle of wine, the next best car, the next super holiday. And we look with open eyes at what we already have. And we find how to enjoy that. And slowly, slowly, we become disenchanted with the going out to get the other things. Not becoming a recluse and never enjoying other things, but as your practice progresses slowly, you'll notice when you're sitting in the restaurant, it's not all it cracked up to be. I could have done this just as well at home, and it would have been more comfortable. Not to mention the cost. With holidays, the same. But we follow the crowd. We're pushed in all directions by advertising. You only have to walk through these airport the bit between the outside of the airport and the bit where you get on the plane, it's just full of bright gold and perfumey smells and different wonderful, amazing things to buy. Really not at the cheapest prices either. It's implied a lot of it's duty free, but there's nothing really cheap. It's all the most expensive stuff, because they know people are in that frame of mind. These shops, these outlets, retail outlets, would not be there if they weren't a success. And they've always been there in airports since we've had massive amounts of global travel. Because people spend the money on the plane, in that magazine, the things you can buy in there, that you could buy in your local supermarket for a fraction of the price. And I've seen people order things, a pen or something, in this magazine on the aeroplane. And you think, why? Just because it's in the magazine? This is just boredom of the journey and wanting to spend. And okay, it's great you've got money, spend it, enjoy it. But think how much happier you would be if you didn't have all of that expenditure, and then, of course, the need to work so hard to have that money for that expenditure. And what are you having the holiday from? You're having the holiday from the job you're doing to pay for the holiday. So you work all year round to spend all your money on the time you have off. And in the time you have off, you spend all the money that you've spent all year round working to produce. You get a bigger and a bigger and a bigger house. Okay, sometimes you need to, with a growing family. But often we get more than we need. We get instead what we want. And then we have to work extra hard to earn extra money to pay for this. And as a result, we need another holiday, which costs us more money. And this is the vicious circle of life, samsara, that continues endlessly. To what end? You're going to die. And in between being born and dying, we make it very complicated. But when you see a rice farmer in the paddy fields of Asia, as complicated as it gets is his buffalo, yoked to a single-bladed plough, pulling it up and down. If you look back on this channel, there's videos of this. It goes on to this day. Now these guys are not doing that for some documentary or for some holiday show advert thing. This is their real life. Simple. Hard work, but mentally satisfying, gratifying, and those people are relatively content when you compare them to the people working so hard in the cities, just trying to keep themselves afloat to pay for the next trip abroad. We can make our lives simple in a very easy way. In Buddhism we have this Noble Eightfold Path, and I'm not going to go into that in detail, but it is right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration or meditation. But if you divide that up into three categories, it is sila, which is moral virtue or good behavior. That's a Pali word, sila. Samadhi, which is meditation, and panya, which is wisdom. So most of the Noble Eightfold Path comes under the category of sila. So right view is wisdom, the last, sila, samadhi, panya, wisdom, right view. But right intention is a kind of combination of wisdom and sila. I'll come to that in a minute, intention. Right speech, right action are all things, so intention, speech and action are things of body, speech and mind. So if we do anything bad to another person in terms of something that will cause harm, it is through body, speech or mind. Either something we do with action, something we say, or our intention behind that, how we think. Then right effort is the energy and resources we put of ourselves, what investment we put in to doing good, whether it be towards developing our wholesome mind states or practicing meditation or just keeping the moral virtues, the precepts. And then mindfulness and concentration are two sides of like the same coin, or two sides of my hand here. Samadhi meditation, where we sit still, watching a meditation object, bringing our mind to focus on one thing. And vipassana, which just means seeing clearly everything that's going on, our physical feelings and our mental emotions, all that is arising and passing away, with what we're seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching and thinking. This is meditation. So sila, moral virtue, meditation, like that, I've just said, just that. And wisdom, understanding, from leading a life structured on those foundations, you will develop the wisdom to understand that all things are impermanent. That new car will only cause more suffering. The new handbag, the new shoes, the new variety of perfume, the new fashions will only cause you suffering. They're unsatisfactory. Unsatisfactoriness is inherent in their nature. You cannot get away from that. And even though we know that, we still go and buy these things. But when you truly know that, you don't still go and buy these things. You get what you need, of course, but you don't have to have the next best one. You can almost become proud of having your last year's model at half the price. And this is the development of wisdom. And this wisdom is true wealth. This wisdom is richness. And this wisdom is the pension you can retire on. Peacefully, happily, content, staying at home, enjoying the garden, or enjoying reading a good book, enjoying the company of others, and enjoying meditation. Meditation which can be practiced at any time, at any age, in any state of health. This is the virtuous nature of these teachings from the Buddha that bring us on this path, this Noble Eightfold Path, to a place in life which isn't complicated. It is simple, and you only need to experience it for a short while to be able to truly appreciate it and want more of it. Now that desire, that wanting, is good desire. It is the desire for less, the desire for simplicity, the desire for contentment with what is, just that, with how things are, the realization and the understanding of the truth. And where does it start? How do you begin this? Because it's all well and good me waffling on for I don't know how long, 40 minutes, 50 minutes, half an hour, even less, I don't know. How do you start, you can say? Where do I begin? This is the easiest part, and it is not complicated, although people make it so. It's just those 5 precepts. If you keep those 5 precepts, you are fulfilling, I think, 4 or 5 parts of the Noble Eightfold Path. Let me just explain. You have just 5 precepts, which really are only one precept. I'll tell you why in a minute. The first precept is no killing, no stealing, no sexual misconduct, no lying, and no intoxicants. Now this is where, by our nature, driven by desire, our tendency towards complexity, this is where we try to say, oh, but there's grey areas here and there's grey areas there. For example, people say, oh, but I can have 1 glass of wine, that doesn't do any harm, it just helps me relax. No. If you want that pension of contentment without years and years of hard work and short, unfulfilling holidays, inclusive of more stress, if you want to really find the true wealth of contentment, you cannot drink alcohol or take any intoxicants in any quantity whatsoever. If you're dying in pain, it's okay. If your doctor administers morphine, something like that, that's fine. You're dying. You're in pain. You've already done your practice through your life, and this is going to assist you in your dying hour with some comfort. But there are no grey areas on that. If you're walking along the road or the path and you accidentally tread on a little ant, killing an ant, step on an ant, and it dies, that isn't killing. You haven't broken the precept. The intention was not there. Right view, right intention, you see? Intention is always the most important thing to consider. It was an accident that happened. Similarly, if some drunk person who doesn't keep the 5th precept runs out in front of your car and you're within the speed limit and you kill them, it is not your fault. You haven't broken the first precept. But this mosquito that keeps buzzing in my ear, I don't know whether you can see it on the camera, if I was to go, and this is just my hand, okay, like that, as a reaction, even as a reaction, there is intention through past karmic activity there. That is intention. That is killing. It's only a mosquito, you say. No, it is a sentient being, it is life. So number 5 and number 1. You do not kill anything intentionally. And number 5, you do not take any intoxicants. And it's quite hard to unintentionally take intoxicants. But if it was unintentional, you'd be forgiven. But it's generally, someone says it was unintentional, that's another excuse. So these grey areas are excuses for breaking these simple rules. So I've been asked recently, what's the difference between no harm and killing? Well, I'm coming to no harm in just a moment. The second precept of no stealing, no taking anything that isn't yours, is self-explanatory. Just don't. Not even the smallest thing. A paper clip from work, don't do it. With all of these things, however minor and small they are, they can lead on to the next thing that can be slightly bigger and bigger and bigger. And once you break a precept, you're on that roller coaster Or no, not roller coaster. They go up and down. You're on a slippery slope. You're going down. So it's not necessary. And if you are breaking the trust in relationships, so not behaving responsibly in relationships, and therefore not adhering to what's the opposite of misconduct? Good conduct. So sexual misconduct, none of that. You all know what that is, what's good, what's bad. Relationships. It doesn't mean you have to be a monk or a nun. It doesn't mean you have to be in just one relationship even, as long as all parties are together and happy and enjoying for the same reasons the same thing, whatever their tendencies are. That doesn't matter, as long as it's all in agreement. But if you're having a sneaky affair behind your wife or your husband's back, and that person's wife or husband's back, then this is going to cause harm and hurt people. And then lying, again, is quite simple. Just don't. Not even a white lie. If someone says, does my bum look fat in this? Or do you like my big new gold necklace or something like that? And you can tell them the truth. Or you can just change the subject. You do not need to lie. Because what are you doing? You're making this man go out with his big new gold necklace looking like a fool, and you're giving this person with the huge bottom the false idea that it isn't. I'm going on some dodgy ground there, I really am, I'm sure. I'm probably tired, but you know what I mean. White lies, no such thing. We make those 5 precepts complicated. They're not. They're simple. Now, by keeping these, you are following the Noble Eightfold Path. So you're well on your way to providing yourself with this contentment and better way of life. Sila, that aspect of the Noble Eightfold Path. When you it's a bit annoying really, that mosquito. I think it might be a fly, not a mosquito. So if you come to a hot country, you can moan about these things. You can save up your money all year round and moan about here. I'm here by default, really. And it's not a holiday. It's the same every day for me. The only thing that changes is each lunar phase. I know another moon is coming up, the full moon, this coming Sunday. I know it's a Sunday and it'll be Sunday. We know that this happens at a weekend when we're in this country because more people will come to the monastery, and that's my calendar. And that's also when we recite and reflect upon our own rules. We don't have 5, we have 227. But that's not rules, that is support structures to this better way of life. It's the only way we can lead this way of life. It's the only way that works. And that's how it has lasted unchanged for 2,566 years. And in these monasteries, in Thai Forest Monasteries here in Thailand, it is literally nothing new. We don't even use detergent to wash our robes. We chop up wood and boil it in big vats on a specific day, which is the day before that full moon, and all of these things. And medicines and such like, things like this can come from the forest. It's all very, very as it would have been in the time of the Buddha. Why? Because it's so simple, and that simplicity works. It works in building a foundation for the basis of contentment. And what does contentment produce? Contentment produces happiness. And we become monks to become happy. And if you're not, you would leave. So the very nature that people become monks and stay monks until they die proves that it works. Because there's always an alternative. As each and every person in the world has. We build our own traps, our own prisons, if you like, of complexity. But when we look at the basic facts of being born, aging, sickness and death, birth, aging, sickness and death. That is all we can expect of life. It is the only sure thing. We're going to die. So we need to enjoy it as much as we possibly can in the interim period. And that doesn't mean earning as much money as possible, because when you are doing that, you're usually earning more money for someone else above you. They're only giving you a bit. So you can just step back a little bit and look at that and ask yourself, why am I doing this? What is my goal? Because if it is to have all the things you really want, the day you die, you're giving them all up. Okay, you may be leaving them for someone else as a legacy, but they soon too will be giving them up. But if you could leave them with the legacy of an example of moral virtue, meditation and wisdom, so leading a good life, they too could follow that and have the same happiness that you can benefit immediately from. Not something in the future when you retire, not something you've got to work for. Okay, there's a little bit of effort in changing your views, changing your direction. Right view, the first part of the Noble Eightfold Path. And right view is wisdom. But that will come just naturally through the understanding of these characteristics of existence. That disenchantment you feel when you go into you're eating in the restaurant and you think for the first time, oh, I could have done this at home. Really don't need to come to these places so much. That disenchantment is the first beginnings of realization that you're on the right road, the right path towards a successful understanding of your life and all that surrounds it, the causes and conditions to make you happy. So I best leave it there and have a quiet word with this mosquito about interrupting my talk. But I'll be quite nice. I don't think it is a mosquito, I think it's an ordinary kind of fly. But until next time, enjoy your practice and I'll speak again soon. Sawadee krap, namaste, Namo Buddhaya.